If you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Special thank you to Landmark Coffee Roasters, a sponsor for this podcast. If you haven't tasted their coffee, you got to go check it out. Some of the best beans in Southern California. LandmarkRoasters.com. Ladies and gentlemen, Talitha Phillips on the podcast. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Talitha, you are the CEO of Claris Health, with a 22-year history of working in integrated healthcare industry. You have a Bachelor of Arts in Organizational Communication from Pepperdine University. Yeah. Let's go Malibu.
Yeah.
And you are a certified labor and postpartum doula. This was new to me. I was like so encouraged to know and understand that. You have been a blessing to LA. You have been a blessing to the church. You've been a blessing to me. You've been a blessing to Legacy. And we are so blessed to have you on the show. And so, Talitha, welcome to Stoke House.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow, you were the CEO of Claris Health. And the first time we met, I think it goes back quite a few years. This might even be like 4 or 5 years, I think. Mm-hmm. I think it's prior to 2020. So I believe Tyler Wilson helped make the connection, and Sean Malarkey helped make the connection. Yep. And Tyler did a table at a gala and invited us to come. And then you guys brought the bus. You brought the Claris Health bus to Legacy and did a full presentation.
Yep.
And so you've been here in LA for how long doing this?
Well, I moved to LA in 96.
96.
And then I started at Claris in 01.
And maybe for those listening, maybe a quick synopsis of Claris Health, maybe a little bit of an overview of exactly what you guys are doing and or the mission of what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. So the easiest place to start is that Claris means clarity. And that's really what we're about, is bringing clarity to situations that can feel confusing, brightness to what can feel like really dark times, mostly dealing with pregnancy, so individuals in challenging pregnancy situations, but our heart is really to be there before, during, and after. Mm-hmm. So building this model of care that says, hey, we're on the prevention side, we're in the trenches with you as you're, trying to decide what to do, and then regardless of what you choose, we'll be there for, up to up to 5 or so years after. So
that's incredible.
Parenting classes or adoption support or post-abortion support groups, whatever it is that we're there with them.
That's incredible. And you've been there at Claris for how long?
22 and a half.
22 years.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Praise God.
Yeah.
For you. This is an amazing work happening in Los Angeles. And for those who don't know about it, I'm telling you, it's been wonderful to discover what God is doing through this organization. The way that Legacy, we try to look for ministry that's already taking place in the city and or organizations that are already doing Jesus things and come alongside those organizations and love and support them instead of me trying to build something from the ground up, recreate the wheel. There are so many great organizations, and I was very encouraged when you guys came along to Legacy, and these connections happened very quickly, and then we were able to get on board and really help and encourage. But you said this journey starts back. You said you moved to LA in 96. Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, so that's interesting. People say, where are you from? I'm like, where am I from? Quick story. My parents were hippies. That whole Jesus Revolution movie was my parents in the 70s.
Are you serious?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, they met, I think, at the altar of a church in Texas, and then my dad decided to go to seminary here in California. So I was born here in Santa Ana, I think. And then
shout out Jesus Revolution movie, Pastor Greg Laurie.
Yeah.
And but this was happening in Texas.
Well, yeah, so they came out here for a couple months or maybe a year, had me back to Texas, and then had another baby, and then they decided to join Youth with a Mission. So they joined YWAM, moved us to Amsterdam.
Wow.
And the next 13 or so years, we were in Holland and Germany, and my dad traveled all over Africa. And
no way.
Yeah, so I grew up mostly overseas.
Wait, did you speak the language?
Mm-hmm.
No way.
Yeah, went to kindergarten at the end of the red light district, so that was fascinating. And then
right in the heart of all of it.
Right in the heart of all of it.
And
yeah.
what's your first language?
So English, then Dutch, then German,
Wow.
and then supposedly Spanish, but
So do you still speak these languages?
I can speak German.
Yes.
And I can understand Dutch.
Wow.
For the most part, yeah.
Trip, man.
Yeah.
So, wow, that's fun. So you hear some German going on in the city or whatever. Do you interact with the people, or do you just let them go?
No, sometimes I interact, or I'll translate to my kids. I'm like,
That's what's scary about LA, right? It's like you do not know. People know there's so many. They never want to speak another language about another person standing next to you. They're like you complete opposite. They know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
So wow, you grew up in Amsterdam. You were there 13 years, and then you said your dad moved around with YWAM. You said even to Africa.
Well, so we lived in Holland. So I have 3 younger brothers, and then we all moved to Germany. We were in Germany the longest, about 6 years. And then when I started high school, they moved to Oklahoma, Tulsa. So culture shock. There's a lot of culture shock. But yeah, so my brothers and I went to Dutch schools and German schools, and then we ended up in the States.
When you reflect on that, do you like that? Or is that good for you when you reflect on your own kids? Like, and how do you wish they had that? Or it's just different? Like, I'd love to hear, because I grew up in a suburb and basically born and raised in the same place, Riverside, California, right here, Southern California. So, but when I think about kids who grew up in other countries, who are from America, I don't know, the broadening of the horizon and being able to see different cultures and meet lots of different peoples and put in different scenarios and force you to grow. And you wonder if that's an advantage or blessing, or maybe it obviously is, but also maybe it feels like a detriment with the culture shock back in Oklahoma.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think as an adult, it's something I've spent a lot of time processing, because as a kid, I hated it. We were the only American kids. We're a biracial family, so at school we were like the poor American black kids. Is kind of how they viewed us.
Wow.
And I think I grew up being like, well, we just don't belong here. Like, we're different. We don't belong here because you think we're American and we're stuck in these other countries. But then we moved to the States, and then it was like, wait, we definitely don't belong here.
Wow.
And so then we're suddenly these kids who've seen the world, and we're like, wow, these kids think going to the mall is like a cultural experience, and they haven't. So I think in college I studied third culture kids and then looked at missionary kids, and the statistics are really sad.
What are they?
It's very sad. A lot of them grow up, a lot of issues of depression. If missionary kids, a lot of them end up leaving the faith because, and I think it's tough. You grow up and you're upset. Like, I remember being a kid and being so mad, like, well, why don't we have, because I had army kid friends, so they lived more of an American life in Germany because their parents were military, but we didn't have military privileges. So we were really different, but the things that you're upset about, like, oh, I want to buy these shoes, or I want this. Well, I want to go to the States. Well, we're doing this for God. And so a lot of kids grow up really angry at God because they blame him for the life that they had, or parents not understanding how to communicate it.
Right.
And so actually a really neat experience as an adult. They did a YWAM reunion, and one of the leaders of YWAM called forth all of us kids, who at the time were in our 20s, and he apologized for a lot of what they put us through and just said, look, we were young parents, fire to change the world, having all these kids and not really realizing that, not putting our family first, thinking by bringing our kids along, this is God's work, God's going to take care of it. But there were probably times to like pause. And so all that to say, I grew up, I have so much empathy I have such a heart for the world. I think I look at my kids and now I'm so thankful for the childhood I had. I want my kids to see the world. I want them to know. I think part of why I live in LA is it feels a little bit like being overseas.
Totally.
We can drive to South LA or downtown and experience a completely different world.
Touch all cultures.
So many cultures.
Yeah.
And so I am trying to expose, people are like, you went to kindergarten in the red light district? And I'm like, yeah, but you know what? My mom, somehow I was 5. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew something, the women were sad.
Right. Wow.
And so instead of sheltering us or saying, don't look, it was, let's pray for them.
Wow.
Or I remember drawing pictures.
Powerful.
And my mom was like, go give them your pictures. Or I think on like a Valentine's Day, we handed them roses. And just such this, like turning these hard moments into teachable opportunities. And so I try to do that with my kids. I've taken them to Uganda, and I'm always trying to find ways, like, you guys got to realize the world is so much bigger than this.
Totally.
And there's so much need out there.
Yeah.
And you can be a part of that.
Yes. Amazing that your parents took the risk and to try and go build the kingdom of God, and to sacrifice so much time and energy and finances and, whatever, they literally burn up, a decade or 2 or whatever it was on trying to build God's kingdom, on Jesus. And it's sloppy and it's messy along the way, it doesn't always work out the way that we hope and or want it to. And that's kind of the message, the journey of Christ now, isn't it? It seems to be very difficult. And those are interesting statistics, that a lot of these missionaries and or pastors, sadly, the church will elevate the mission of God so high that they will sacrifice their family on the altar of ministry, and there will be a lot of casualties, and a lot of kids will grow up, pastors' kids, PKs, they grow up hating the church and hating God, and they run as far as they can away from the church. And I'm reminded of Moses in the Old Testament. His wife comes to him, and basically her name's Zipporah, and she gets mad at him, and she has circumcised her son, and she throws the foreskins at his feet because she's ticked off. She's like, you circumcise all these people, you don't even take care of your own son. And this is exactly what happens to many pastors and or people in ministry, is for some reason, in the name of honoring God, we literally throw our family and our spouse under the bus. And that 1 Timothy 3 is actually really clear about this, that if a man cannot shepherd his own home, he cannot shepherd the flock of God. And so the first ministry, the highest calling of the pastor and or missionary, is the spouse. Then it is the family. Then it is the church and or ministry. But man, we get this backwards. I was talking with a pastor yesterday, and he says, for many pastors, the church is the other wife and or the mistress, and just steals the attention and pulls from. And so I'm grateful for you sharing that story, because it gives perspective, right? It seems to be a double-edged sword. I don't know why. I think it's because humans are involved, but it's like, praise God for your parents, trying to do something for God, and the impact it's made on you, obviously. I mean, the fact that you can connect with so many people now, and that you have empathy, and you can see through so many people's eyes from so many different directions, no doubt, that came from the upbringing, it's a treasure.
Yeah.
So you moved to Oklahoma. Were you guys homeschooling out there? Were you going to, was it a private school? Was it a public school system out there?
In Oklahoma?
No, I'm sorry, in
Germany?
Holland, Germany? Or,
German
Amsterdam?
school, Dutch school,
Okay.
public school.
Wow.
Which is hardcore.
Was it?
Oh, yeah.
They don't mess around.
Oh, no. You have to decide what you're going to do with your life in 3rd grade. Literally. And then they test you.
Oh, wow.
And they tell you if you're going to do what you think you're going to do with your life.
Wow.
So you pretty much know if you're going to go to university at
Did you
3rd
decide?
grade.
Did they decide for
Well, I mean, so it's interesting. They tested us. I didn't test the university level because still didn't really know the language. So much of the German language is just intuition of being raised to know, whether a word is feminine, masculine, or neutral. Like there's rules and then exceptions. So you just kind of have to know. But so I didn't do that. So then I had to retest in 5th grade. And so they have 3 levels. So I got into like the middle level where I would have stayed at that school through 10th grade. And then I could have transferred. Otherwise, like my brother, you'd have to meet him. He's 18 months younger. Like he didn't, I mean, he was definitely on the blue collar track, which is funny now because he's incredible chef and business owner, but
Really?
the Germans would have been like, "You're going to be a baker.
Wow.
Maybe you'll work in a
Or a farmer or something, huh?
Yeah, he was not going
Wow.
anywhere over there, but yeah.
Wow. So then you guys moved to Oklahoma and culture shock, you're back in America.
Yes, and then my parents had this big sort of disagreement about whether we should stay in public school or go to a Christian school, and my mom sort of won that, and we ended up at a Christian school directly across from, I called it ORU High. It was right across from Oral Roberts University.
Oh,
and
wow.
It was like sort of a feeder school. And honestly, how do I say this? It was not a great experience.
The Christian school, private school, or the connection to Oral Roberts University?
Good question. I would say probably just the Christian school in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
When we lived in Europe, to be a Christian was tough. It's probably like it is in LA. Like, not many people are Christians.
Right.
It's not easy.
Right.
No one goes to church. And in school, you're either Catholic, Protestant, or atheist. And so all that means is you have 1 hour of education, I think, a week, and you pick. So first I was Protestant, then I'm like, oh, that teacher was horrible. So then I'm like, let's be Catholic. And then the priest was a drunk. So we're like, that guy is terrible, always yelling. So then I'm like, I'll just be an atheist and do my homework.
Wow.
But I loved that my parents didn't take those things too seriously. Like they were very much about faith is about you, not the institution that you are attached to. So I loved them for that. So then we moved to the States and, we're in this very, Christian school, but not many people were actually Christians from what we were raised, right? Not a lot of people had personal faith. It was a lot of performance. Appeared to be good, and then we'll think you're good.
Right.
If you don't appear to be good or you don't fall in line. So there's just the hypocrisy, and it was rough. And so we were there for a couple years. My mom was working at the school. I think I'm the oldest, so I was there, I think, 8th, 9th, 10th grade, and then I finally just begged my parents to let me go to public school, and they did. And then I had a much better experience. I think I felt much more accepted there as a Christian, even, because, it was a huge high school. And then my brothers eventually all sort of ended up at public school as well. But yeah, so I think that was this rocky, like, wait a second, everything we thought, oh, we're different because of X, Y, or Z. And then you get there, you're like, oh, it's not the American thing. Well, or the Christian thing, or the biracial thing. Like, it was funny to experience my parents, even though, so my dad's family is Black and German, actually. His parents were...
He speaks German.
Like, scandalous. But yeah, yes, he does too. But his dad was a Black soldier that married a young German girl. They had a baby first, and then they got married, and she came to the States. And so we've always been raised with all this diversity, but never in a way that it was elevated like it was. So then we come to the States, and it's a much bigger deal.
Really?
In Europe, it's not.
Interesting.
Like, even though they don't use great language, and, it seems like it's a very, elitist culture, or that they're very judgmental. But we came to the States, and you feel it more. You definitely felt it a lot more.
From kids, or just from people in the culture, or like people walking around the streets, or neighbors, or...
Yeah, I'll give you one example. We, my junior year, I think it was prom, and we were going, everyone was deciding who they were going with, and I worked at a restaurant, and one of the guys wanted to take a girl to prom. He was Black, she's white, her dad was a pastor, and the pastor said, absolutely not, because of what the people in the church would think. And we grew up, so when my parents got married, my grandfather, my mom's dad, disowned her.
No.
And so I had heard the story, and she had always felt like God had told her that there would be restoration there through her children, and that ended up happening. So we watched my grandfather, who literally disowned my mom because she married my dad, come full circle.
Wow, praise
and
God.
accept us and her brother. And we saw this. So I think in my mind, I was like, oh, that's old school. Like that's stuff they did in the 70s. Nobody does that. But then as a high schooler to see, oh gosh. And it was the fear of what people in the church would think. So I didn't encounter any of that overseas until we moved to the States. And, but I think this is where now looking back, I'm like, well, I'm so glad that she was my friend because I can't believe I did this, but I think I wrote her dad a letter
Nice.
was like, you are not a Christian.
Wow.
Because if you
Get him.
were- And she ended up going to prom with him.
Wow.
So there have been moments in my life where I realized somehow the justice aspect of my upbringing, this fighting for justice in these unjust situations has carried through my life. And I remember that she said, well, would you tell my dad what you told me?
Wow.
Sure. I
Well,
don't care because he needs to know.
So you were bold even back then.
Apparently, I was very quiet and shy, but if something needed to be said,
Yeah.
I would say it.
You're going to fight for it.
Or write it.
Yeah. That's awesome. Did you do any sports or music or student government in high school? Were you involved in any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I played soccer.
No way.
Yep.
What position?
Defense.
Nice.
Used to be called sweeper.
Okay.
What they call them
Yeah,
now. Now they have all these numbers.
Right.
My kids play. I'm like, I don't know what a 9 is and a 3. Like, you're an offensive. We don't call it that, Mom. And then I think I was on student government, actually. Yeah, I was. High school.
So there's some leadership in high school, and then somehow you, do you graduate there in Oklahoma? Do you go to university there in Oklahoma, or did you find your way to California?
Yeah, well, the story now, as I'm telling you this, I'm like, maybe there's a string through my life. So
Yeah.
we had a college night. All the colleges come and visit. Pepperdine did not come to Union High School because I don't know that that's a recruiting ground, but they must have sent postcards. So there was just a stack of postcards with a photo of Pepperdine. And I was like, oh my gosh, this place is so beautiful. And whoever I was with, I don't know who this poor guy was, but he was like, oh, you could never go to Pepperdine. He's like, do you know how much that costs and how smart you have to be? And I was like, watch me.
Nice.
So I ended up going home, and then I regretted that later because I showed my parents, and then my dad got really excited, and he worked for Farmers Insurance at the time, and they had a scholarship program to Pepperdine.
Crazy.
Yeah, so I got an academic scholarship and wanted to go to Baylor. So I was regretting everything. I'm like, why did I say that? I don't really want to go to California. It seemed so far. But God definitely led me out here. And you have a friend that says, you're the only person I ever knew that studied at Pepperdine, but I studied all the time because I had to keep a 3.8 GPA to keep that scholarship.
Unreal.
Or something.
Yeah.
So
not easy.
yeah, I was out surfing every morning or whatever they think we do there.
Right. And you have to get really good grades, obviously, on the high school side also to transfer in, right? I mean, you have to have a pretty solid SAT score. And
Well, yeah, except that because I went to German school, my SAT score was horrible.
Really?
Like I probably couldn't have gone to college.
Is that because you learned literature through the German culture and language?
Yeah, I mean, I never took an English class until 8th grade.
Wow.
So the Germans were unbelievable in teaching you how to study. So I think that's what got me through, but basic like reading comprehension. Like it's funny, I'm like, I run a company, but don't ask me to read an article and tell you what it said. Because the comprehension part or having to, the ACT tests certain things or SAT, ACT. So my dad wrote a letter. I remember he wrote a letter to Pepperdine, or I think to all colleges, explaining why, we grew up overseas and blah, blah, blah. And somehow they accepted it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But that gets to the root of whole education, because it's like, I wonder, the kid who can read the paper, perfect, doesn't necessarily have the drive and or tenacity or determination to jump fences and to continue to push forward and to push through university and or I don't know, the entrepreneurs and or those leaders in society who are running businesses oftentimes are illiterate. They are not very good at the school system.
Yeah.
But they are well-rounded, and they have something else in them. They have the whole of life, a whole life education is what I like to call it. It's understanding how life works and having that broader horizon of people, understanding people and how things work, and then having drive and discipline. And it's honestly, if you have that built in you, I think you truly can accomplish anything that you want to, even if you can't ace all the tests. I don't know. At this point in life, I mean, I don't like my education. I felt like a really dumb kid, coming out of high school. And I basically just, worked the system, to get through. I could get the good GPA because I knew how to do homework in class and memorize things the night before and then ace the test. And then I didn't actually retain anything and schmooze the teachers and have fun and, just work my way through with all the different groups and crowds in high school. And then, but I didn't know that my wife, though, she's homeschooled and she'll consume a book like in a day, And it's like I wish I had those brain, like I wish I had that. She's like, no, I wish I had what you have, And I'm like, it's funny how we we want the other, I wish I was brilliant, on a paper sense, and, but it is amazing that, even with all of the difficulty and working through all of that and then finding your way to Pepperdine and making it through, and the line or the string that you pointed out, like God must have had, his finger on it all, from YWAM and all the way to somehow making it to Malibu.
Yeah.
And then by your dad handwriting letters to people, to make this happen, to here you are, So did you go back home to Oklahoma after Pepperdine, or did you stay?
Never left.
Wow.
Never left.
Never left.
No.
So did you launch straight from Pepperdine into work, or what? Did you break for a little bit?
No, so the year I graduated was everyone was going to a tech company back in the day, the old school tech company. And so I started off as like an office manager in Palos Verdes at a company. And then within I guess back up, maybe summer after my freshman year at Pepperdine, I had gone home for the summer. I had been dating a guy. Part of why I think I didn't want to come out to California was I had been dating a guy who had a track scholarship in Oklahoma, wasn't leaving. And so went home. We were, still trying to continue a relationship. And right before my sophomore year, I was about to go overseas. I found out I was pregnant. And so, consider all my upbringing, everything. First boyfriend.
You're 22 years old or so?
I'm 19.
19.
Yeah, summer after freshman year.
Oh, freshman year. I'm sorry.
Freshman year, yeah. So I'm in Oklahoma, about to go to Germany for a semester with Pepperdine. And just world crashing. And, and I had always been raised, obviously, to understand the value of life. I remember I had friends in high school who got pregnant and was like, you can do this, be here. And then here I was, and so ashamed, terrified to go to my parents. And I'm the oldest kid, first to go to college. So I ended up, a friend took us to a Planned Parenthood, I think was the first place we went. And they didn't do abortions there, but I remember the woman looked at me and she was like, hey, you have your whole future ahead of you. She's like, we can make this go away. And it's that thing where you're like, in your gut, you know what they're saying is not true.
Right.
But you just don't have the strength to, speak up. And so, long story short, took us to another clinic and ended up having an abortion. And that day, I remember saying, like, I'm going to do this, and then I will spend the rest of my life punishing myself for what we're about to do. Said those words out loud. Made my boyfriend at the time promise that he would do the same. I mean, it was like such a horrible, I think back on that, just like talk about darkness, like the darkest time, that drive. And then spent the next couple years trying hard to do that. I think in some ways, I read somewhere where they said often, well, somebody that has an abortion will then try to overcompensate. So especially women tend to overcompensate. So it was like, well, I did this to keep my scholarship. And I had called Pepperdine at the time and said, what would happen if somebody was pregnant? And they were like, well, you can't live on campus. They had all these, they're a Christian school. They had all these rules at the time.
Right.
And since then, we've helped change them all.
Wow.
Which has been kind of a cool story. Wow. But so then my senior year, maybe junior, senior year, I was at a church and I saw an ad for this post-abortion support group at this little place. Never heard of it. Slammed. It was in the old school bulletin. Slammed it shut. And that thing haunted me for about a month. And every Sunday, and I think somebody saw me staring at it too long. And I remember thinking, I'm the only Christian person that's ever done this. Like that was why it was like, yes, I know God forgives and he heals and he loves people, but those are people that didn't know what they were doing.
Right.
I knew what I was doing, therefore I don't deserve that same grace and forgiveness. And so eventually I gathered the courage and I called, and I, from the very first phone call, it was just so life-changing of just being the woman on the phone, just saying, we're here for you, take all the time you need. I finally joined the group. It was like a 12-week, 10-week process with other women, and me fighting the whole time, trying to decide why my situation was different. And then finally just sort of surrendering. And at the same time, I had this class at Pepperdine and a professor who was not a Christian, but he had us write papers of the hardest things we've been through.
Wow.
And then you could write private on top or public. And I wrote out my whole story, and I turned it into him, and he called me and said, I want you in my office at like 7 a.m. tomorrow. And I walked in, and he said, it was just the most life-affirming, life-giving words. And he just said, you are not defined by this.
Praise God.
And this is not the end of your story. It's not the thing that won't make people love you. People will love you with this, not in spite of this.
That's right.
And so those two things really sort of started changing the trajectory of my life. I thought personal life, had no idea that it would be a career, but I finished that group, and then that little organization didn't have a director at the time. She was going on maternity leave with her second baby, and for some reason they kept saying, God told us you're supposed to work here. And I was like, no, I have Pepperdine loans, and I'm supposed to be a lawyer or a consultant or whatever I was supposed to do. And for about 6 to 12 months, I would run into these women, and they would say, oh, that position's still open. It's probably waiting for you.
Wow.
It's not. There's no way. And then I remember sitting in my car one day and just saying, okay, God, if you're going to make me do this, you better make it abundantly clear. Like giving him this ultimatum, and terrible. I don't advise or don't recommend that. But I ended up getting a call from Chuck Norris, the actor, Walker, Texas Ranger, Chuck Norris family. Yeah,
are you kidding me?
Just like
the Chuck Norris?
The Chuck Norris
was the ultimatum God, Chuck Norris must call me? Like the Chuck Norris?
Should have been, right? We could make a meme out of everyone. If you need to hear from God.
That's right. Have Chuck Norris call you.
Make him have Chuck Norris call you.
That's so good. That's good.
Oh, gosh. I'll laugh if they find this one day. But they were having twins, he and his wife, and they wanted somebody to be with the babies at night, like a night nurse position. And I knew the family. They knew me through some people, and ended up asking if I would do it. And the only way I could work that many nights was if I had a part-time day job, which is what the job at Claris was. So it was like, okay, here's my abundantly clear answer from God that I am actually supposed to do this. And, Claris was tiny at the time. We had a $90,000 budget. We did very few things. We were not a medical clinic. And I walked in, and I would say probably the first 2 years was me trying to get out of the job and finding every reason. Like, I can't possibly be stuck here. And,
Wow.
think about it, I have 3 brothers, never had a sister. Women's issues were terrifying.
Wow.
I didn't want, and here now I have 2 girls. I'm like, I didn't want girls. Women's issues were terrifying. Not very emotional of a person. And here I am sitting with people who are crying all the time.
Yeah.
So it's just a very beautiful story of how there's just this surrender process. When God calls you to do something, I always tell people my story is like the surrendering, like the kid in Target that's like kicking and screaming because they don't get a toy, and the parents like scooping them up and walking out, right?
Yes.
Like that's kind of what God did with me. It was not this like, he showed me my calling and I listened.
Wow.
It was like, he showed me my calling and I kicked and screamed.
Right.
I don't know, maybe I'm still kicking and screaming. I mean, I don't know.
Aren't we all?
So I'm always like, I'm not the one that should be doing this.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing, but here I am.
Yeah. Moses, you're the guy. No, I can't speak. I have a stuttering problem. Use my brother Aaron. No, Moses, you're the guy. You're going to hold the staff. No, use my brother Aaron. I have a stuttering problem. No, you're the guy. You're going to lead millions. You're the guy.
Yeah.
And that seems to always be how it is, God gets his way in the end, and praise God. He knows what's best, right? He knows what's best for us. Did you have a come to Jesus moment, like when you were younger, or is it because you were so close to the mission field and watching your parents, you felt like you always knew the Lord, or was there an epiphany moment for you with God, a moment you discovered grace, a moment you, like waking up from a dream, like all of a sudden you just like, oh my gosh, like it's all real, like I'm not the, this is who, God has made me to be in relationship with him.
Yeah. So, I'm not one of I never walked away from my faith. I think, in fact, I always knew God loved me, which was maybe the hardest part about it, was that I knew he loved me and I was breaking his heart. It wasn't like an act of rebellion. It was more of...
Where did that come from? How did you know God always loved you?
I mean, I guess my parents, my upbringing, I think, I remember in Europe, we would walk to school. I tell my kids, I used to walk 3 miles to school barefoot. I really did actually walk to school like 3 miles, or it felt like 3 miles, right? In the snow.
Yes.
And
awesome.
I remember talking to God always as a child, as if he was like my imaginary friend, right? Because he understood me. I could speak English and, but I always had that kind of a relationship. And I think on all 4 of us, all my brothers would say the same. Definitely one of them is a little more on the rebellious side. But he would say, I always knew, I never thought God didn't love me or wasn't there for me.
Yes.
So it was more of, what am I going to do with that relationship? And so my come to Jesus moment was, I think, going through that support group afterwards. And I remember one day there was we were talking about forgiveness, and I said how I just didn't want God to forgive me, because then I would feel as if what I did was okay or something. And I remember a girl turned to me and said, so was Jesus dying on the cross not enough for you? Like, did you need him to do more? And I was like, oh, wow. That I'm rejecting the gift by thinking I'm too good for it. Really, it was more of a prideful, like, well, what I did was, and I think that was my moment of, no, you're right. He did that for me as much as he did for the next person. And maybe if I can start to believe that, then that grace can flow out of me from a place of my own brokenness. And I think previously, the first couple years, or maybe several years that I was in this position, I never told my story because I felt like, well, people don't need to know that. They don't, then it feels. And then I realized, but by sharing my story, other people find themselves in the story.
Yes.
And then it's much more authentic. And then the board, I had this amazing, I was 23 when I started. I knew nothing. But they were willing to go on this journey with me where I was like, what we're doing, I don't think it's working. I don't think you can do this in LA a certain way. I think we need to start listening to the people who are walking through the doors and saying, well, what do they actually need? Instead of us saying, well, this is what we offer.
Totally.
What do they want? So then we started building a brand new model of care that's so unique to the needs of the people we're serving. And how can we connect them to resources so that they have options? How can we care about entire families? How can we not care about outcomes, but about people? And it really started shifting our language and our model of care. And, you know, we're attacked from all sides now, right? Because it's easier if we would just say we're super pro-life, or we're super pro-choice, or we're Republican, or we're Democrat, like all these labels people want. And then we're like, no, we love people.
Right.
And people are unique.
Yeah.
And they first need to know you see them and you love them.
Right.
Not what they're going to do for you.
Yes.
On either side. And by the way, whatever they do affects their life for a really long time. So how do we love them for that season and in their future, so they can have healthy, thriving families and homes and lives? So that's...
Yeah, Jesus isn't right or left. He somehow offends both parties. He offends everyone. And it's the best thing about him, you know, because he is the perfect, he is the God-man, of course. He is the perfect human. He displayed perfection to us. He disrupted everyone around him, even his own disciples. And he disrupts our lives as well in a good way, right? He challenges the very core of who we are. He gets some out of the bullseye of our hearts. You know, he will find where we are lacking in love. How do we know that you love God? John argues in 1 John. He says, well, by the way that you love people around you. The second greatest commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. This is how you know all men will know you're my disciples by your love for one another, by the way that you care and love and serve one another. And no doubt we have to stand for truth. No doubt we have to stand for what is right. Jesus did that. They killed him for it. But his standing for truth and what is right seems to offend all parties. And I love that you guys are navigating this well. Talitha, you're doing an incredible job. This city is full of people of different views and different cultures and different ways of life. And for such a time as this, gosh, I mean, all the stuff that you've grown up and gone through, no doubt has prepared you to be able to navigate this for the last 22 years. I mean, it's like, it's a trip. Like, I'm not just saying it. Like, I haven't heard your story before, you know? So like when I download all the information, and then I try to pick a candidate that might be able to navigate such a difficult issue of pregnancy, you know, in this day and age. And how do you take care of people on both sides? And how do you take care of this love people in LA, you know, that have all kinds of different beliefs? And again, from them getting pregnant or before pregnancy, you know, and to after the child being born and taking care of them for up to 5 years. And like, how do you wrap all this up and then convince people, please, let's everyone come together and help and love and serve these people who need help. And no doubt all the fun intellectual wars and battles that have gone on in the last 3 or 4 years. I got to ask you this question. You have to have some pretty incredible tact and or wisdom to navigate a nonprofit like this or an organization like this for 20 years. And I've only been in LA for 9 years. And this is the wild, wild west. Let me tell you. And we don't even have a very big church, you know, but it's like this what I've had to navigate in the last 9 years in the church and with people in LA. I mean, this is the Wild West. Any specifics? I mean, you have some experience, you have some wisdom. You're a CEO. You're a woman CEO. This is powerful. I mean, it's really incredible. I mean, Aaron was sharing that with me before you walked in. It's like, she's a woman CEO in LA running this organization, helping all these people. Like, I'm like, I know, dude, that's great. And even like having to work with religious organizations as well, which is dominated by mostly men, let's be honest, you know, and you're doing it and you're a mom and you have some wisdom in this area, and I'd love to hear anything that you want to say, like regarding like LA is not an easy place to navigate, right?
No.
And I think you get all of what I'm saying without me like perfectly saying it, because it's like once you're in here and you've experienced even for a while, it's like these treacherous waters that you're trying to constantly work through and try to help and serve as many people as possible without disrupting so much, and like it's just a constant balance.
Yeah, I mean, even just hearing you say that.
Sorry.
Oh, no, these conversations are good. I'm like, wow. My grandma just died recently, and my brothers, we were
Sorry.
at the funeral, and she lived 96 years.
Awesome.
Amazing life. My brothers and I were getting a drink. Truth. We were getting a drink afterwards.
Nice.
And my brother goes, well, I mean, we're Huff kids, which is we're Huff kids, and we're fighters. And I was like, we're fighter? I'm like, oh, we are fighters. Oh my gosh, maybe this is why and it's not like punch you in the face fighting, but
Sure.
it's constantly having to sort of be on guard. And I think, maybe it is that like never really fitting in, but then if you think from a kingdom perspective, we aren't really ever supposed to fit in because we don't really belong here. So maybe I see this manifested every day, right? Like, yes, I'm a woman in a man's world in a lot of ways, right? And then I'm like ethnically ambiguous. Nobody really knows what I am. So people are always like, what are you? But they're like, we can't figure you out, And then I'm in women's health, which is possibly the most polarizing, field. And so I think in one day, I'm speaking at a church, so I'm like planning a sermon, and then I'm talking to a grant foundation, and then I'm, navigating this battle with Yelp that's never going to end, and then I'm dealing with, and it's just all day, and sometimes like, but are we really? Can I say we really are who we are? Like, I'm a Christian. Is that a problem? I run an organization in women's health where we really do love people without judgment. And trying to say to the world, like, by the way, you can do that. You can love people really well as Christians.
It's awesome.
And not ascribe to those labels that people want. And so I think for me, I'm somehow able to see both sides, the good and the bad of both sides. And I think that's what I feel called, like with our donors. And I'll hear donors say things and I'm like, yeah, so, and I'll try to help them frame that on both sides.
Right.
And I think I love that. I actually get really excited about that because I think that we agree on a lot more than we disagree on. And, we all have our personal, political beliefs or whatever, but I believe you agree on a lot more when you come together and you actually talk about the people at the end of the issue. And how do like I'm speaking this weekend and I was looking at the topic and I was like, I don't know why I'm on this panel because I don't do that. Like I won't persuasively speak, but you know what I'll do? I'll tell stories. I'll help people find themselves in the story. And to me, that's more powerful than me telling you why you should believe a certain way on a certain issue. And I think that that's just something I've learned in this messy, wild west of a city.
That's really good. Would you elaborate on that a bit more? Jesus was a storyteller, and he seemed to always grab onto the stories to kind of nail home points before he would drive anything home. And sometimes the stories would kind of wreck the masses more than even nailing down a specific point, because stories are ambiguous to some degree, right? They're not perfectly clear. You can find yourself in the details, and it always leaves you kind of like wondering, like, are they saying that? Are they not saying that? Like, that's pretty amazing that worked out. And it challenges the core of who a person is, because as you just said, they find themselves in your story. They connect with it emotionally. And it's amazing how that can start to tweak the view in the right perspective, hopefully the God glorifying truth perspective, even if they're not a believer. Like you're literally like massaging, the culture in the direction of the Lord Jesus or in the direction of truth without saying it directly.
Yeah.
This is I don't know, I'd love to hear more about that. Did you discover that along the way? Like as you were telling stories, you just saw it click or?
I think doing life with people and realizing, like even we have a huge gala every year and typically people put a name on the stage, right? Like so-and-so is going to come speak to us. And then everyone buys tickets. We don't sell tickets. We don't have a speaker. We just share stories and people give because they love the story, but we don't make sure the story is beautiful and tied with a bow, right? Like some of our stories make people uncomfortable and they should because not every story begins and ends with Claris, right? We're just like a tiny part of their journey. But I'll give you one example. So a client of ours, she's been in our world for over a decade. And she had, an unintended pregnancy. They were going to terminate. They decided not to. It was twins. One of the babies passed away very tragically. And then she got pregnant again and has had, several other children. They moved to Texas. They left California. And it was a story that so many people were involved in because when the baby died, we planned the funeral. We had, pediatrician. We had all these people helping. And then, people have followed her and she's become a dear friend of mine. But the story makes people very uncomfortable because it's not this perfect story of, they experienced grief, then they got married and there's been continued tragedy in her life in many, many ways. And I remember when they moved to Texas and she was pregnant again, I flew to Texas to help her because she said she couldn't find a place like Claris to help. And I'm like, that can't even be possible. So I go to Texas and I got to navigate the system in Texas and see how difficult it was because in their model, everything begins and ends with the church. So if you need food, you go to the church. If you need, whatever you need. But she had very real medical needs and one of her kids is autistic and there were these needs that in LA, even though, there's issues with our system, there's so many issues.
Sure.
But the resources were easier to navigate. And so
the resources are there.
The resources are there. There's so many resources, but it's too expensive to live. Then you go there and it's cheaper to live.
Right.
But then the only way for you to get the resources is to go to the church. Well, she has a very hard relationship with the church.
Right.
She loves Jesus. I really believe she does. I know she does. We talk about it. But she had been very hurt by the church.
Wow.
So I see that. And then I've heard, so then a decision like Dobbs happens and the world, half the world's rejoicing, half the world's mourning. And I'm looking at it going, well, the law was one thing, right? Now it's like, what are we going to do in each of these states?
Right.
Are we going to become the state that is just known for abortions? This is all we do. We tell people that this is your option. And then on the other side, are you now all these babies that are being born? How are we caring for them? So I think that it gives this, to challenge people. So when this young mom gets pregnant again and both sides are like, she's pregnant again, because they're both judging, really.
Right.
Well, she shouldn't have this baby because she already has so many. And the other side is she needs to be on birth control, or why is she continuing? But nobody's looking at she lost a child.
Wow.
And there is a brokenness inside that she loves these kids. And why are we not addressing that? And so anyways, long story to say that I think when you engage with people, you start to realize these are lifelong journeys and it's a privilege to be involved as long as they allow us to be involved. I consider her kids my kids. I love them. And life is hard. I sometimes wish I could protect them or keep them for a little while, but the best thing I can do is love their mama so she can be there for them. And, take care of them. And so.
Well, it's an amazing thing that you, I love that you don't just write policy and just stand back from a distance and let things happen, but that it seems like you get down in the mud and you start figuring out the mess and try to understand really what's going on the inside. This happens sometimes in the church, where we can cross our T's and dot our I's perfectly on our doctrine. And then when it gets down to real life application, when you get down in the mud, with the people, you get down with the sheep, you start realizing like, what we have written does not exactly apply perfectly. What's going on in here? And even more so when you have to apply those policies and or doctrine to your own life and force that to work out. And you say, why am I not growing faster? Why am I not performing like I've written down? Why have I not done the things that I thought were supposed to happen? How am I acting in rebellion against these things when I'm the writer of it, or I'm the one putting these things down? Instead, you realize you can't force a plant to grow quickly. You can try and manufacture some stuff, but you're going to end up destroying that plant. It needs slow watering, and it needs slow sun, and it needs... I wish I would grow faster today. I just throw fertilizer on myself right now, and I just become the man I'm supposed to be. But it doesn't work that way. And right when you get down in the mud, when you get down in with the sheep, you're with the people, and you start listening to stories, you start understanding where they're coming from. You start realizing, like, even when I was younger, I felt like I had all this stuff perfectly outlined and figure out. And the further I get into this, I realize, wow, this is way bigger than I ever expected. And there are thousands of different angles of understanding in which we need to really get down and understand these people. I love that you guys are doing that you're, again, not just an organization that says, we're going to work with these politicians, we're going to do this, we're going to get that thing going in place, and okay, bing, bang, bang, let's go, everybody, move in this. But it's like you want to get down into the story to understand the heart of the person and the individual. You're a mom, like you love kids, kids, and you want the best for these kids, and you want the best for these moms. Again, another powerful parallel that like is sitting right here in your story, Talitha. It's like, it's a personal touch, on the organization, which I think has caused it to prosper and do so well. Incredible. Thank you. You are a doula.
Yep.
You are a doula.
Yeah.
How did you get into this? Again, this gives you another angle.
Another layer.
Another angle. And if people don't know what a doula is, which there's probably a lot of guys listening that have no idea what I just said, so.
That's good.
What is a doula exactly?
The Greek definition of doula is servant. Isn't that interesting?
Let's go.
But a doula, labor doula, I go through labor with individuals and help them give birth. So the doula is usually teaching classes, helping couples or individuals get prepared for birth, and then I join the family when labor starts, and I don't leave until baby's born and usually a couple hours old. And then there's postpartum doula, which is what I started with the Norrises they used to call us night nurses, but I go in and I help sleep train babies and help families,
When
get
Chuck
rest.
Norris baby came out, was he like moving mountains already, or like what happened?
It was twins, actually.
Twins.
It was a girl
Of course
and a
it
boy.
was twins. When Chuck Norris has a baby, it's twins every time. Sorry. It's terrible.
Yes, they were great. They were little ninjas. But we
Came out with headbands on. Full geese.
I know.
That's
They were
good.
awesome. But actually, it started parallel. So about a month after I started at Claris, my assistant, both of us worked part-time. She was pregnant and about to have a baby. And I don't know why I offered to go with her. I would love to see if she remembers why, but I somehow ended up at the hospital with her, and it was a crazy long labor that ended in a C-section. And a nurse at the hospital at UCLA said, "You should be a doula." She was like, "You are so calming in this." And I was like, "Doula? What the heck is a doula?" So I looked it up and I was like, "Sure, I'll do that." So I trained, and it's been beautiful because, here I am at Claris working with pregnant moms who often don't have support. So to have this heart of like, oh, they need advocacy and support in that delivery room. Gosh, if anyone's had a baby, you need advocacy and support. And then to do this, on the side. So I've always done the birth and then the night nurse stuff, the postpartum. And I keep saying I've been trying to retire for like 21 years, but I'm still doing it. I'm working 5 nights this week. I mean, I still do
Wow.
it. But what I will say,
How many babies have you delivered?
oh my gosh, way more than 200. I mean, a lot.
Incredible.
And what I love is it's just such this crazy world. Like here I am sometimes in South LA. I'm on a committee for working to help combat infant and maternal mortality and realizing how important prenatal care is and advocacy and doula support. So trying to fight that in the city. We launched a whole prenatal care program based on that, where it's group prenatal care in South LA. And then I'll leave, and then I'm often in like celebrity homes at night with their babies. And the questions that my celebrity moms ask and the questions that our 16, 17-year-old moms ask are the same.
Wow.
Regardless of how much money you have or where you live or what you look like. You want to know, am I doing this right? Is my baby going to grow up and hate me? Are they going to starve? Are they going to make it to their first, all these things that parents, these concerns, are they eating enough? Are they sleeping? Are they pooping? Are they? And so it's so sweet for me because I realize I'm able to say to a lot of, my moms, it's all about like listening and knowing. And I will say sometimes the younger parents parent more from their heart and their gut because they don't read 1,000 books and get confused.
Interesting.
And then a lot of the older moms who have more means read so much and then they're so confused.
Right.
Do I sleep train? Do I not? Do I breast? Do I bottle? It's like so crazy.
Yes.
So I'm there telling all of them, you're doing a good job.
Wow.
Like your baby loves you, even if they're screaming. They're communicating, and all these things that I'm saying across the board. So. Yeah, it's a lot. Here I am in the most women's of women's issues, like stuck in it.
You do in-home or in-home births and also hospital?
Mostly hospital and some home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. You found yourself not only providing care pre-pregnancy to post-pregnancy and 5 years after, but also in the delivery room helping these moms. And really, it is a powerful testimony. I love that Christ is the foundation. I love that is a lot of the motivation to continue to love and serve. And that I don't know, in LA, I've noticed that there are a lot of Christians that don't ever get beyond, the church walls oftentimes. And they say that, they love God, they know God, and they can even be full of His Word, but somehow the love of Christ doesn't beam from them, and it doesn't actually reach the stranger and or the neighbor. And I don't know, it's awesome to watch. You continue to pour and try and see people ministered to in LA. I wish there was more people like you, Talitha, in LA, because we need more people in every industry, I think, ministering in this way. I feel contained sometimes being inside the church walls, that my job is to train and build up and disciple. And it's very difficult to get outside the walls and to get into the city and actually see real life, real tangible ministry, the hands and feet of Jesus taking place in the city. What He did, He went out into the towns, He went out into the city, He was touching people everywhere. Sure, having God conversations with them at times, but also taking care of very practical needs and telling stories and using that as an opportunity to bring them to God. And I wish the church would get a bit more involved in that. I don't know exactly what that looks like, to be honest. I am constantly looking from the inside. You have the privileged opportunity to look from the outside into the churches. When you think through the churches being involved in Claris, maybe you can speak a bit to that, as we have probably pastors listening and or church leaders listening. And what does it look like? What's getting on base, for a church? What's a home run? What's like a grand slam, when the church gets involved? When you've been dealing with churches and religious organizations probably for a really long time, like when you survey that, what's helpful, what's not? Maybe you can speak to the church a little bit.
Yeah, that's such a good question. When I started, it was really sad. I remember the former interim director was handing things over, and she said, "Oh, don't waste your time on the churches. Like they just don't support." And I remember thinking, "What do you mean they don't support?" And said, "Oh, there's like two." And I think, well, that can't be, that can't stay that way. And realizing it is a complicated issue, I think,
Right.
for the church. And we've found a lot of difficulty in LA figuring out how to get the church to be passionate about this and not afraid. And I
Sure.
think some of it is the church is afraid that by supporting an organization that deals in any way with abortion, maybe without even realizing like that how we care for people,
Sure.
that they feel that they're making a stance and that somebody in their church is going to be mad. So one of the, amazing things, I think one of the biggest accomplishments is that we have grown that. I mean, there are a lot of pastors who call me and say, "Hey, I'm preaching this Sunday and I'm going to talk about abortion, but will you read my notes and tell me if there's anything that I'm saying that would be offensive to somebody who's been through it?" Or, I coach a lot of people saying, "Hey, if you're going to talk about it, just acknowledge the audience that we're going to talk about something, and I know that at least a fourth of this audience has been directly impacted." We know the statistics. That means there are women and men sitting in this audience. And as I speak today, you might feel your heart breaking, and we're here for you. That just the walls go down. And so there's, just coaching in that regard. I think one church said it best once. They said the perfect relationship is like a triangle where the church and the organization together impact the congregation. And I think that would be the slam dunk for me, is seeing these relationships where the people in the church know, hey, if I'm ever in a situation like this, I can go there for help. And the church actually loves me. They're not judging me in this situation. They love me. So that's a slam dunk. And then so many ways to get involved. I think one of our programs that I'm most excited about and is very easy for people in the church to get involved is we have a program called Every Mother's Advocate. It's anyone with an open case, so DCFS in LA or CPS, Child Protective Services, and the rest of the nation. So we teach classes around the nation for free to anyone who either has an open case or there's a threat of a case where the children would be removed.
Wow.
We train volunteer advocates, and you're just partnered one-to-one. So one mom to one mom, or one mom to one woman. You don't have to be a mom. And then we have men in the program as well that are doing these court-mandated classes. And so it's an incredible relationship building. And then we've built a fund. So whatever needs there are that are preventing them from reunifying, we cover. So if they need beds or they need,
Oh, wow.
sometimes it's like they need an air conditioning unit for the kids to come back. So we'll take care of all of that. So it takes the pressure off the organization doing everything. And we have 309 community partnerships in the city of whether it's that our mobile clinic provides services there, or we refer there, or they refer to us. So realizing like we're supposed to do all of this in community. I think that's the most beautiful part. And the church is a piece of that. Churches have programs sometimes that benefit the individuals we serve and the families we serve. It's great to know about those. It's great for the church to get involved in helping, So whether it's the church or the people in the church, ideally it's all of it, right? But I think the churches can't afford to not talk about this. I think people in congregations are wanting to hear, where does my church, how do they believe?
Yes.
Is it safe here?
Right. It's interesting. I don't know. You're pulling out things that I wasn't exactly thinking through, because that is, what do we believe? What are we doing about that? And then, that bigger question, like, is it safe here? Because I am thinking through the parent and or child who gets pregnant. A young guy gets his girlfriend pregnant, and or a girl in the congregation, she gets pregnant from her boyfriend, whatever it is, and they're young. And immediately do those parents want to run from the church? immediately what do those parents do? I don't know. There may be parents or future parents listening even right now. I'm thinking through like, I mean, you've seen this hundreds of times, I'm sure, like what, and even experience to some degree with your own family. I mean, from experience, how would you encourage parents to deal with a situation like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's pressing, and my oldest is almost 16, and sometimes I see the girls we're serving, and I think, oh my gosh, I mean, here's my own daughter. Would she know that I would love her, or would she be afraid I would react? I think my parents, the thing that they didn't do great is my dad would always talk about other families when the girl got pregnant, like, well, her life's over, and I would like to believe that he's changed his ways a little bit in that because of my story. I mean, it took me, I think, 5 years after working at Claris to tell my parents my own story. I remember standing in their doorway trying to get the courage to wake them up to tell them what I was going through. And I didn't. It's so crazy when you're in it. I went to church one Sunday, and I remember thinking, if the pastor says something from the stage, I won't have this abortion. Like, you're begging for signs, which is so crazy. But I would say to any parent, like, your kids need to know that you are going to love them, and you need to know that you're actually going to love them through this. I think there's so much, and in doing that, maybe we just need to go to them and say, hey, look, there's nothing. I tell my daughter, I mean, she's in high school. I'm like, look, you think I'm strict, but I need you to know there is nothing that you can ever tell me that will make me not love you. And if you end up in a situation and something is going on, you can call me, and I will not judge you for being there, but you have a lifeline. Like, I think they need to know that.
Good.
And that we're not... I'm so guilty of this. I think sometimes my identity in a parent feels like, well, how good my kids turn out, right? Like when they're little, it's like, I can send them in the nursery and they're not screaming, or, then they get older but it stays, is my worth as a parent how good my children behave? Then I had my second one. I'm like, well, that goes out the window. Like she's every teacher report, I'm like, oh yeah, I have a good one at home. You just don't know her. Like, so my identity quickly became, how do I navigate this little ball of energy so she doesn't hurt herself? But having to say to both of them, like, no matter what you do. And it's so hard because I'm like, do I believe that? I have to believe that. And maybe I need to say it more and more so I actually believe it. And then, if you're out there and you find yourself in a situation like this, like, there is no getting rid of this, right? Like, I think there's so much hope in all of this, and you don't want to make decisions because you feel trapped or because of what other people will think. I say to everyone in this situation, if you could silence all the voices in your head, what would you do? Because we hear a lot of what others tell them to do. Like, what would you do? Well, my school might. No. What would you do? And it takes often a long time for them to even be able to answer that question because they've never thought of that. So I think just and reaching out. I know a lot of pastors who've told me that they've handled these situations wrong. They've, I've had pastors say, well, I told people, maybe you shouldn't have the baby and God will forgive you. Or I've had people say, I told somebody if they had an abortion, they'd go to hell, like all these extremes, because I think we don't necessarily know. And just being there and saying, send them to Claris. Like, we specialize in this, so I would love for the lowest win is that every church knows, hey, you hear a pregnancy. We saw a woman who works for the county, very high up in the county of LA. And she said, oh, every time I see a pregnant person now, I think, Claris. If every pastor thought, pregnancy, not my wheelhouse, Claris.
Wow.
You can send them to us. Or, we have a program that talks to youth. Last night we spoke at a church and we're educating parents on, your child's brain and adolescent years and how to handle these situations when they're frontal cortex is not formed, and they're literally flipping their lid, with the front part of their brain, and they can't make these rational decisions. And I was listening going, I run this program and I need to hear this every week, to be reminded of this is what's going on with their brains. They're kind of brain damaged. They really are,
Right.
Now they're saying maybe till they're 28.
Wow.
It used to be 25.
Right. Wow.
Now they're saying maybe 26, 27, 28.
Wow.
That's a lot, right?
Yeah.
So.
No. Well, no, I love that. Our Father in heaven says to us, I love you no matter what. And he actually means that.
Yeah.
And he's actually proven that in our lives. Like if you just trace, it takes time to understand that, right? It takes time to receive that he actually has been there all this time. And it seems to be some pastors are scared to say those things off the pulpit, that God's going to love you no matter what, because they say, well, now that people have a license to sin, they're going to go and just take advantage of God. But what happens is he wins in the end. He always does. Even if you take advantage of his grace for a little while, he's still standing there, and he ends up winning the heart of his people in the end. And this must be the heart of the church, even for situations like this, for pastors, fathers, mothers, parents. I think when you're talking that through, I really appreciated the step-by-step of trying to get a parent actually to think through the process of that moment of your child coming and telling you that, that they're pregnant. And most parents listening whose children are not pregnant currently say that will never happen. Right? But if you do not, that's immediately it's like Eden Shep West. It's just that will never happen, because I'm their dad. And I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
But if you have not processed that within your own mind and said, I'm going to love you no matter what. I'm going to love you no matter what. I am here no matter what. You can always tell me. The door's always open. And if they know that, by the grace of God, hopefully, if that door ever does open one day, you can respond correctly and you can love them and serve them through it. And we do know where there's help. We do know that it's okay. It's going to be okay. We'll figure this out, even as I wonder if a father's, displaying that to their child, I'm not going to love you no matter what, causes a child to truly not only run and hide, but also want to explore in the secret place. Because there's this idea that it is obviously forbidden and it's darkness and it's secret, and my dad wants me away from that. But the opening the door of it all, I'm going to love you no matter what. If you're in the gutter over here, if you've done that at a party, if you're caught with those people, you get arrested. I mean, I'll never forget my story. I got in a scuffle with my dad one night after a football game. He said, "You're going home." I said, "No, I'm not." And he said, "Yeah, you are." I said, "No, I'm not." And so I said, I told him I was going to stay with my buddies that night. So I literally tried to, we got in a scuffle, and I'm out in the front of my school. And anyways, we ended up running off that night, me and my buddies. And I knew my dad was looking for me in the neighborhood. And I ran down the street, and I'm probably a sophomore or junior, I can't remember. But we go, and I could see my dad coming down the street to find us where we were at. And we went and hid under this guy's motorhome. And we're hiding. Me and my buddy were hiding under there. And my dad's a worship leader in a church and the whole thing. And I'm just I'm hiding under there, as I know I'm in big trouble now. And I started contemplating, I'm leaving home. I'm basically going to pack my bags. I'm out. I'm going to go do my own thing. And as we're under the motorhome, I can see my dad going up and down the street trying to look for us. All of a sudden, I hear sirens going off. I'm like, what in the world? And all of a sudden, police cars start coming down the street. And I'm like, this is crazy. They pull up in front of the house, and they get out of the car, and they see us under the hiding. And the people who lived there had called the cops on us because they saw us under there. So the cops come out, and they handcuff us, and they put us on the curb. And I'm like, oh, dude, we're done, dude. My buddy Travis is there with me. I'm like, this is it, dude. I'm like, I can't believe this happened. My dad's going to absolutely kill me, right? Well, Yep, we're sitting there on the curb. The cops are giving us a hard time, and then my dad pulls up, and he's like, "Yes, my son," whatever. So the cops let me go. I get my dad's car, and we're driving down the street, and Travis is in the back. He goes and drops Travis off, and I literally think my dad is gonna like destroy me, right? And no joke, like the car goes silent. We're sitting there, and he just says, "Hey, you want to go get a hot chocolate?" Which is like was my favorite drink. And I'm sitting there thinking like, what? And he literally never said anything to me about it again.
Wow.
And we drove away. And like, when I reflect on it, my dad basically poured a large amount of grace on me in that moment. And what's crazy is it basically transformed, it transformed my view of my dad, and it transformed my view of God, like in that moment. Because what he did was he basically said, "I'm going to love you no matter what." Right? I was being an idiot. Like, I want to go and goof off with my friends. I don't want to listen to my dad. I'm trying to like do my own thing. And of course, I could have been bitter at my dad for trying to stop me and like crush my night, my experience, and stop my fun and all of the rest. And it turned into a terrible night. And I thought I was going to get doubled down on. Like, it was like, you're you're done, dude. Like, you're grounded forever. No car for you. But instead, he, by the grace of God, like, saw the opportunity to pour grace. And that changed me forever. And then I was a defender of my dad even my own brothers. From that moment on, like telling them, "Hey, you need to listen to dad. Like, you got to do the right thing." So it's amazing, when you drop the hammer all the time, you get the opposite, right? But then when you up front, you say, "I'm going to love you no matter what," or you display the love of God, whether it be in a situation of pregnancy or kids get arrested or they caught doing some drugs or drinking or trying to run away from home or whatever it may be. Why in the church do we have a different heart than the heart of God, like in these matters, where we oftentimes have the gates shut and the door closed and say, "Prodigal son, you are not welcome back home until X, Y, Z." And it's very interesting that, I don't know, I guess these details that you pointed out, like letting your kids know that no matter what goes on, I'm going to love you no matter what goes on. I'm here for you. I think parents need to know that, and they need to hear that, because someone did it for us, right? I mean, someone did it for us. And if we don't do that to this next generation, we are going to lose them, to the world. We are going to miss the opportunities, and we will break those relationships, and it will mess everything up. Oh, I love that picture.
Yeah, that's a great story.
Yeah,
Extravagant grace.
My dad's, he's a pretty awesome guy. He's a gentle giant, but he is, I don't know, he's been really good to me and my brothers over the years. Even through all the hard upbringing, it was, I don't know, I'm again, the whole package deal, like you look at the details of my dad, you could, he'd pick himself apart and everybody would pick him apart. But we look at the whole of the man, again, just a guy who is trying to love God, trying to love his kids, that's it, and it goes a long ways.
Yeah.
You have been doing this for 22 years. What is the future of Claris? What are the goals? What are the things you guys are hoping to do and make happen here in LA?
Yeah. So our most exciting sort of dream, although it seems like it's becoming more of a reality, is so we were talking about realizing, it takes a village, it takes a community, that everyone that walks through our doors, even if they're there for an unexpected pregnancy, they're dealing with so many other things, right? And our model is very holistic or integrated. We're looking at your physical, emotional, and spiritual health.
Yeah.
And so we have these 300-something partners, but it's very difficult to navigate in a city like LA. So
right.
you come to us and you need domestic violence services or housing, and then we're like, okay, we have these great partners, but they still have to navigate all of that in a city like LA. So our vision is to build a campus that brings like-minded organizations under one roof with the sole purpose of providing this integrated care to people who need it. And so our, not just the services, but we want, in South LA. So we, especially as people in South LA, are dealing with a lot of transportation issues, mistrust of the medical community, trauma, past trauma. So we want to have a safe playground. We want drop-in childcare. So if you're accessing any services, you get free childcare for a couple hours. We're envisioning a coffee shop so that you come in, we give you free coffee so you can hang, build a community, and then all these resources that they can access. So we started this, came out of a planning retreat in 2020, which was a very bizarre year to be dreaming and seemed crazy. And then we started talking to people and realized a lot of people that have a huge heart for this. It's been done with arts, after school arts program, but no one has ever looked at the complex needs of individuals and families in these challenging pregnancy situations. So we have 3 partners who've signed up already, who have committed letters of intent, about 3 more that are about to, and then about 20 others on a list.
Wow.
We had 2 donors step up and give pretty significant seed money.
Awesome.
So now we've been looking for a space. That's been one of the hardest things, finding a spot in LA.
Right.
But our goal would be, to just make an even bigger impact that's longer, like deeper, to go deeper with people.
Right.
That, as they live out these situations, that we want to see communities thrive. It's not just these individuals and families, but the whole community. We want to combat some of these awful rates of infant maternal mortality and all these other things that our communities are facing. And so doing it together. So that's our big thing. But we've also noticed, like, our mobile clinic goes all over LA County. We're potentially partnering, hopefully one day, with a pastor out in Ventura County to bring it into some migrant worker camps out there. We've been doing some work. It's just really hard to get out there. So there's a lot, but continuing to just walk through these situations with people and challenge the community to get more involved. That's it.
And you guys have a couple events coming up soon, is that right?
We have a huge event, on October 21st. It's
October 21st?
Yep, our annual gala at the Skirball Cultural Center. So there's details about that on our website. And if you like the storytelling, it's interesting. Here we are in LA, and we have a lot of Hollywood people that come that say, this is the best storytelling in the city, which is amazing because we're in the biggest storytelling capital that does it really well.
Right.
But I think it's because they're real stories. You see this city, and we live stream it. Anyone can tune in wherever you are and watch. But I think maybe a good way to end is that one of our stories that we're telling, I won't give too much away, but was a young homeless woman in Malibu. Actually, she was pregnant.
Wow.
And she delivered a healthy baby girl because of a team of, like, a task force in Malibu, and we were brought into that task force. And I share this because, as you were talking earlier, I was thinking, this is not a Christian task force. It's like a county task force at us. And we were sitting at a conference table in Department of Mental Health and, all these different organizations. And I know we were not all aligned in many ways at that table, but this group came together literally for one purpose, which was to save the life of this one baby. That this one baby would be born safely and that her mom would be okay. And it's still to this day one of the most beautiful stories, even though, we were in this mom's life for several weeks after she gave birth, and through a crazy string of God events, that baby was adopted by a pastor on the West Side.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. So they're in this video. So spoiler alert. But the video ends with the guy shooting asked me a question, and he said, if you could see her today, because I really wrestled with wanting her to raise this baby because I knew that's what she wanted to do, but she just couldn't do it and decided she didn't want to do it. And so wrestling with this, like, we're here to help you. You can do this, but then seeing her choose to go back to the streets and not want that. As a mom, my girls were with me when this whole thing went down, and everyone's crying, and and my youngest daughter was adopted, so just seeing the beauty of all that and the pain of that. So, so anyhow, he said, what would you say to her if you saw her today? And I said, I just want her to know that she's loved and that it's never too late.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've been reflecting and looking at our gala, I'm like, what is the theme of our gala is perfectly loved. But I think that's the message we all want to hear, right? You're loved and it's never too late.
Right.
And I think that if you don't remember anything about this show today, that if you would remember, like, you're loved and your story is not over, like, you're not defined by the things you've done or your kids have done, or, and it's never too late. And I think that we all just need that message. And God wants to use us in the city and whatever we're passionate about. If it's not pregnancy, find your passion. It's foster youth or anti-trafficking, whatever it is. Get involved, because there's people that need you.
No, it's so good. Is there, you maybe have already said it a couple ways, but I'd love to just ask you that because you're deep into this now, and you've been doing this for a couple decades. And when you reflect back on, I don't know, all that you've done and maybe all that you hope to do in the future, can you pinpoint exactly what Jesus is calling you to do, like in LA? Like, have you been able to put your finger on the single calling and or like thing? Like, I think when I stand before him at the end of time, I think that this is what he made me or built me to do. I think this is, whether it's Claris or not, but is there a I guess, is it an attribute and or is it a specific thing that you sense that he's calling you to do over and over that seems to manifest itself in all of these, different ways, from the organization to, doula to counseling and spending time and then reaching into the church? And you know what I mean? It's like, what has Jesus called Talitha to do, like in LA? Like, are you able to define that?
I think in the shortest term, I would say it's to paint pictures of hope and over people's lives, and when they just can't see it for themselves in that moment.
It's good.
And to be in the trenches with them, whether it's through contractions, literally, or babies that are crying at night, or a young guy or girl who doesn't know if they want to go through with the situation or feels their life isn't worth it. On the Strengths Finder test, I think my number one strength is restorative. So I love fixing things. So it's hard for me to not fix people, to not fix things.
Yes.
So I think God has placed me in something where sometimes I can help fix things. Like, I can help fix a baby that doesn't sleep, right? But then I can't fix somebody's situation, this homeless girl, right? Like, I didn't, and then it's, what can I do to not give up on people? Because in those broken places is where I think we are the most aware of our need for each other and our need for God. And I think sometimes I look back and, like, the most devastating times in my life, I'm like, that's when I felt the closest to him because I needed him. I needed him to get out of bed. I needed him. And so there's a lot of people that I see that are in a lot of pain, but it keeps them closely connected. And sometimes when life is great, you think you've got it all figured out, but we're still broken. We still need each other, and we need him. And so, I think.
You alluded to another thing. You said there are a lot of people listening who maybe should get a bit more involved in their calling, like in the city. And they have the gifting, they have the talent, they have the ability, they have the drive. They just don't know it yet. Maybe a word for those people, who have been contemplating, like, gosh, I think God might be calling me to do something in the city. I just don't know what to do or how to find it, or like, you've done it. You took the step of faith, you took the risk, and you look back and you're like, this is crazy what's happened, maybe a word for those people.
Yeah, I think first of all, just do something. Like,
just do it, Nike, baby. Let's go. Just do it.
Take the first step. I mean, so many people get so stuck because they're like, I don't really know. So just take the first step. I mean, I think we are in a city where there are so many ways to get involved. So if you're a Christian, start by praying. Ask God to show you what it is that you really care about. If it's something like what we're doing, go to the website, give us a call, come take a tour, join our mobile. I mean, we have some people are like, I'm not really into the whole pregnancy thing. Well, we do health screenings. We need receptionists. We need people to do intake. We go to the Dream Center. It's mostly men that we see there. We need help doing intakes. If you're like, it's kids, then research, call your church. If your church can't connect you to any resources in the city, then I would ask them, why do we not have any? Who do we work with as a church? Who do we partner with? Can you connect me and help me get involved? And then even just a basic Google search. I do know that a lot of nonprofits have changed their models, and there's a lot that's happening online now. And so not all of them are like us where you can physically get involved. But every one of us has a gift. And if you can't physically get involved, guess what? So much is happening online.
Yes.
Those parenting classes I was telling you about, they're Zooms.
Oh, wow.
Mostly. So we're teaching classes in Italy and Mississippi and New York, but our moms or counselors are all over the nation. They don't have to be where they are.
It's amazing.
So yeah, there's lots. And, if you don't physically have the time, start by giving and then find time, or vice versa.
Yes.
I can't give, but I have time, so I think we're looking for volunteers at our gala if you want to do something on the 21st and, come help greet people or whatever it is.
Awesome.
There's so much.
We need more Christians to be in action and to put their feet to their faith and get after it. Get on doing something, please. Evil prevails when good men, good women do nothing. We must do good in this city for the glory of God. And that's the best way to do it is really to display his love by loving and serving people everywhere that you go. You guys are doing it on a high level, and we're so thankful. Talitha, where can people find you and connect with you?
Yeah, well, Instagram, I think we're Claris Health website, clarishealth.org, org.com. There's a tech company that took our name. And yeah, I'm easy to find, Talitha. It's pretty easy.
You are the Talitha.
I am the only, no, there's quite a few of us, but I am Talitha J, I think.
You're at
on
Talitha.
Instagram.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
Sweet.
I'm easy to find.
Okay.
But yeah, we'd love to get to know you and find ways to connect.
Awesome. Well, we love what you're doing. We're so thankful again to stumble upon a treasure in the city and see that you guys have already built it out. It's already happening. So it's easy for Legacy to come alongside and try to love and serve and help from the back end. And it's a joy. And thanks so much for coming on the show. I mean, the stories and the insight and the direction I hope it ministers to a lot of people. We're very thankful for you, Talitha. May God continue to give you favor in this city. From the rich to the poor, seriously. May God allow you just to continue to prosper, and minister to many more of these families and, husbands and wives, broken people, these little babies, in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Yeah. Amen.
Thank you.